Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liz Rich, and welcome to our webinar. I am the director of the Feliciano Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Montclair State University. And we just really appreciate you taking the time to join us here today. So today's webinar is titled Unlocking the Power of Credit for You and Your Business. So this is a collaborative effort brought to you by the NJSBDC and Montclair State University's Feliciano Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. So just a quick note about the Feliciano Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. The FCE&I is a unique resource for university and outside community members that provides training and mentorship to aspiring creators and entrepreneurs through our programs, advisors, and events. So one of the events I just quickly want to tell you about is the New Jersey Small Business Summit we have coming up on October 24th at Montclair State University. So this is a full day event that is really meant to inspire, educate, and advocate for entrepreneurs and small business owners in New Jersey. So we're going to be having amazing speakers, panelists, giveaways, networking opportunities. So definitely do not miss this first ever collaborative event for all New Jersey small business owners and entrepreneurs. I'm going to put the registration link for this event in the chat. So you can go to that link to register, view the agenda, and check out some of our amazing partners. And one more thing I want to mention is I want to let you know about another resource for you all. It's called our Ignite Entrepreneurs program. This is also open to everyone, including community members and non-MSU students. So in a nutshell, Ignite is an in-depth experiential program that helps folks launch and grow their passion projects, side hustles, or existing businesses. So it's a 20-week incubator that offers flexible hybrid learning, one-on-one mentorship with industry experts, and just a lot of opportunities to create and grow your network through online and in-person events. So the best part is that it's free to MSU students and available at a very minimal cost to outside community members. So I'll also put a link to our Ignite inquiry form in the chat for those of you interested in our upcoming winter cohort that will launch in November. So that's where we are with the FCE&I and some of the great events we have going on. Before we begin the webinar, I'm going to switch over to that. I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. So just so you all know, today's session will be recorded and made available on the NJSBDC website. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, so please submit your questions in the chat box, okay, in the Q&A box. So I'm going to be going through there periodically and pulling out some of the questions that are coming up a lot or some interesting questions for Ozzie. So our speaker, Ozzie Lourenco, will provide one-on-one counseling to you all at no cost. So if you have any questions about the recording or the counseling, please contact Rabia in the chat. So I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker for today, Ozzie Lourenco, who is the Capital Team Consultant for the NJSBDC. I've been involved in a few of these webinars with Ozzie, and knowing her, this webinar will be very informative. And for some of you, it could be truly transformative. So my advice is to take notes and ask a lot of questions in the chat. So that being said, I'm going to throw it over to Ozzie. Thank you guys so much for having us and bringing this amazing resource to the community. I've said it many times to many people, entrepreneurship or business ownership is like building a house. And at the foundation is your credit. You cannot build on an unstable foundation. So take the time today to just start to understand your credit and where you are on your journey. But most of all, don't be afraid, be informed. And that's how it's going to happen today. So Ozzie, over to you.
Okay. Liz, that was wonderful. I may have to steal or borrow one of those. By the way, guys, I did give Liz a few cups of coffee. Thank you for the return of the kind words. I appreciate them. But I'm going to have to borrow that. You know, don't be afraid, just be informed. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Time, and I start this way always because I need to remind you, time is really the only commodity that is invaluable. You can't make or get any more of it. So the fact that you're spending your time with us means oodles to us, okay? That being said, I'm Ozzie Lourenco. I'm one of the consultants under the Capital Team, which is a state team for NJSBDC. And I do a few things under that capacity, and one of them is assist you with some type of credit counseling webinar, excuse me, one-on-one. So that being said, let us move forward. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the organization that I am representing here today, the New Jersey Development Center Network. This, with the Feliciano Center for Entrepreneurship, is what allows us to bring all this credit webinar to you. For over 45 years now, we have been providing services, all types of program, technical assistance for small to mid-sized businesses. And it's important to say that, and it's not on there, but this is something available at every single state. In our state, specifically in New Jersey, we have 10 regional centers. What does that mean? These are centers specifically positioned to either handle a county or various counties, but we also have 20 affiliate and satellite offices throughout New Jersey. So if I am, say, I'm going to make up a county that's far away in Camden, I may not be able to get to my center, so there could be an affiliate center. I mean, I should say a satellite center that I can get to. So it's important to know that because we are here available to you. Don't be afraid to reach out. Sometimes our availability is really a counseling session about, hey, I just need to brainstorm. I feel a little lost. That's good enough. We're here for you. Our job is to walk with you and assist you in the way that you need best. Okay. That being said, let's move forward and course objectives. I think it's safe to speculate that if you are here, it is either because you want to learn about credit, get a better concept. Maybe you have a business and want to understand, well, what is credit for my business? What does that mean? So these are the objectives that we're going to try to attain today. It's to learn these essential concepts, these very rudimentary concepts, because I do pause for a second from the slide. I do want to say there is a second part to this. And in the second part, we're going to delve a little bit more on techniques to increase my credit, techniques to increase my financial stability and my growth. So I do want to say that that's going to be hardcore on the second one. Here, we're trying to really walk in slowly and have a better understanding. So the second point is I want to understand why credit is so crucial here in the United States. And I need to say that because if you're from another country, or if you plan to leave and go there, this credit will not have the same impact there as it does here. So it's important to understand that when we're talking about credit, and I say this because if you're an immigrant that came in 5-6 years ago, and I had a client, so this is why it's coming to my mind, this was very new to her, this idea of building credit. And at some point, I do want to say something. I'm not going to say here because I digress and I apologize. But this is why it's so important to really understand why in this country it is so crucial to understand credit and how it affects your finances. Review the steps to establish it if you don't have it. Make it a little bit better if it's not quite where you need it, or if it dropped for a million different reasons. There it is, or repair your credit profile. Discover strategies to leverage credit effectively. Now, we're going to start here on that. Discover is our entrance, but we're really going to go more into detail in the second webinar. So if that's something that you're more interested in, please make sure to attend the webinar. We don't have a fixed date yet, but it will be available by email. That being said, let's talk at the very, very beginning. When we talk about credit, and it's important to say this because you hear the word credit has multiple meanings. But when you think of finance, think of any time there is a borrower and there is a lender. What does this mean? The lender will provide something, it could be anything, right? And the lender will say, here are my terms for my lending you this. Now, when we talk about credit, the way it rolls in society everywhere, it now becomes the idea of your credit worthiness, or, and this is interchangeable as I like to say, or your credit history. If someone says to you, hey, what's your credit? You may be inclined to say, oh, my score is 683. That's your credit score. And your credit score comes directly from your credit history slash credit worthiness. How do I get this credit worthiness? And if I duplicate my wording, I apologize, but I feel it's important to say this. I get my credit worthiness from having a healthy credit history. Okay, so I hope you've made the connection at this point. Let's move on. So when does the idea of credit begin in our society? And really, this is going to be very individual. It changes from person to person. Um, I did have a client once who just did not, he had cash. He bought his house cash. He never needed cash until one day he needed to purchase something for the business. I don't recall what it was, but there was no credit. He always had cash. So it's going to be, and mind you, at this point he was in his 40s. So when it starts, it's really going to be very individual. Depending on my situation in life and my age, if I'm looking for a credit card and I obtain a credit card, and I have to say this carefully because looking and obtaining are two different things. I don't know why I separated department credit card, but department credit card will also create credit history for you, a loan, a car, a home mortgage, I should say lease for an apartment. Yeah. So it's going to be very individual from person to person. But the second that you decide when you're going to start, right? I would like to see if there's a credit card available to me. You have to remember that what your lender will be looking at is your character, your credit character in this scenario. And these are the 5 C's of lending. So I needed to put them. I'm not as concerned right now with I should be concerned with the third one, but for the purpose of this webinar, we're really looking at character and capacity. Character comes from your credit history. That's how important it is. And the capacity is what the lender will match up to say, well, all right, here's our credit history. Let's see what their present moment income is, and let's match that up. So they're looking at both. But when we're looking strictly credit, when that lender needs to decide, how credit worthy is this person? They're looking at your credit character, okay? Now, here's the important part. When you start to obtain credit, what does that mean again? Let's understand this. When I start to use somebody else's something, whether that's cash, whether it's a credit card, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a car, whether it's a couch I rented, that's when I now have this idea of credit. Credit comes directly from having some type of debt and paying on that debt. That's where really the whole formula comes in. So it is so easy to go in the wrong direction if you don't have the right strategy. If my income level today now dropped and my credit debt is still there, that's a problem. This is a big no-no that I'm sure many of us have disregarded to help a child. Co-signing a loan, big no-no, because if that person defaults, it's all on you. Financial emergencies, that's going to affect us. Hey, I needed to use the card, or I used that money to pay the card for this. Divorce, whether it's in the case of now you have less income, or it's the case of your almost to be ex-spouse. I had a client like this the other day still using the card. That's going to affect you. This is a biggie for every day, not these special scenarios. You know, you forgot to pay your card on time. That's super duper important. And let me make a note because I don't know if I put in the slide. I'm going to put time on this. I like to return to that. And the ubiquitous marketing, and this is the psychology of why credit has gone in maybe the negative direction for many of us. We go into a store, we know we don't quite have the cash, but you see something and their marketing is so great. You're like, oh my gosh, this is so great. This is something I've been wanting, not needing forever. And boom, you buy it, even though it was outside of your budget. And I'm gonna hopefully return to budget in a little bit and write this down because budget is an important concept. And I will tell you why it's an eye opener in a sec. And of course, social acceptance. Your friends are all going on this great trip. They really want you to go. You know it's outside your budget capability, but you put it on your card, even though you know you won't be able to pay it back 6, 7, 8 months, okay? This is the social. Why is this important? Because in the second webinar, when we start to think of redefining things, we have to really consider this. When you have to be hardcore and say, no, 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 this is about me, and I need to make sure my financial future grows. It's okay for me to say no this time around. I wanted you to know that if you happen to be in a situation where you are in debt, and this should in no way make you feel better, but I want you to know how important it is to understand how credit can take you in the wrong direction very quickly. I have a few numbers for you. By all means, this does not mean you're in that number. I just simply wanted you to know this is a reality right now, this issue with credit, with debt, I should say. And I'm using these interchangeably because if I owe too much debt, my credit will be affected. So 104,215 is the total debt. Keep in mind, it's across many different areas. That's a lot. That is really a lot. Debt peaks between 40 and 49 among consumers with excellent credit. This means that at some point, they're using their debt level, what a house, is going higher. So here's the problem there. It may not be a problem at that moment, but if their income is not keeping up with their debt, at some point, there may be a problem, which is why some of these things that we later talk about is so important. And one of these such things is making sure you have an emergency fund. An emergency fund could be 6, 7, 8 months of what I will need to survive if something happens. The largest percentage of average consumer debt is mortgages. And this is important. I know I have a few clients who are now looking into homes. You want to be comfortable with that. You want to be comfortable with whatever the interest rate is on a mortgage, because you may be at a certain point in your life now, but you don't know where you are. So when you're getting that mortgage, if you already know that's going to be my largest debt, now you should already be making other decisions to make sure to counterbalance whatever's going out there. So these are important things to realize. That last point, many of you out there maybe are buying your first home. Keep this in mind. When you get into that debt, that's going to be your big one. Keep in mind, what are the other items in my life that I'm going to adjust to offset this very large debt. These are other just related facts that I want you to know because they will affect your debt. Maybe not today, maybe not in a week, but in a few years. Medical costs are rising. Consider putting that into your budget, into your emergency fund. Cost of raising a child, this one's a little overwhelming to me. Average, again, average. It will change from person to person, from state to state, from city to city, but $250,000 from the time they're little ones to the time they say, see you later, mom, going to college, dad. Super scary, 250,000. 2 out of 10 Americans use 50%. And this one can be scary, can be not. It depends again on what am I bringing in. So the fact that there's so many Americans still using most of their income rather than to just put it away or enjoy, but to pay back debt is a little overwhelming. But the last 3 are the ones that I thought are eye openers. Almost half of the families in the U.S. live paycheck to paycheck. That means I seemingly don't have capabilities to save anything. I say that because there are ways to get around that. 19% of Americans have zero savings, zero. That means if something happens in my life and I have those credit cards that I have worked so hard to keep, I now have to start using them in a negative way as my emergency. And that's always a negative way. Only 1 in 3 Americans, and this is the one that on the second webinar, I really want to get into, have a written budget. And this will go towards you and your business. And it's interesting because we're going to talk about business in a little bit, but what's interesting to me is that I usually say to clients on a personal level, hey, run your household like a business. But if I didn't create a business budget, then I'm in trouble too. So the budget is what I'm going to use to make sure that my finances are clean. My finances are working for me to give me peace of mind, to get me to where I need to be today, tomorrow, in a year. So that budget plays a really important role, and that was the real big eye opener. This is just for you to kind of get an idea where you're at against others, like, because that number that I used before is just an average. And I never remember who's Gen Z, millennial, Gen X, baby boomer, but I wanted you to also notice that if I'm using these numbers, and this is only from one source, there's probably other sources that I didn't have time to do anything else. But if I'm using these numbers, I want you to notice that Gen X, I think, is starting to understand, at least the younger folks that I speak to, this concept of managing your debt a little bit better, making stronger decisions, because you can see that the numbers are shifting. And this is where we all need to be. I need to start making some very strong decisions about how to handle my money, which is parallel to handling my debt, which is parallel to helping my credit. Okay.
Hey, Ozzie, real quick, sorry to interrupt you, but there's some comments in the chat about the sound. So maybe if you could just get closer to your mic, I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. Can you hear me better now?
That sounds better for me, so.
Okay, everyone, I apologize. I have a hard time by adjusting this head. It's a big head. It is.
Thank you.
It's not fitted for my body. So let's move on, because this is just numbers for you to really see how the concept of debt has shifted and how our lives have changed in terms of income coming in, debt going out, inflation. There's so many things that change the number. But to me, what was interesting is that I felt a sense of hope, and that hope meaning that I can see a shift in these numbers, which means that as a society, the concept of credit and debt is becoming a little clearer to us, and it's helping us make better decisions. So this is my chart of hope for you, for me. So that affects your credit in one way, in one specific way, in the way that you will manage it. If you manage it incorrectly, it will affect your score in a negative way. Why? If you recall, in the very beginning, I talked about credit history. So your lenders are reporting to the credit reporting agencies, and we'll get to them in a second, and they let them know, hey, paid on time, paid late, whatever the case may be. So that was you managing your debt correctly. And I want to make sure you understand, I'm not passing judgment at all. I am trying to tell you how it's being interpreted. We have a gazillion things that happen in our lives to cause us to be late or not pay enough. So it's not I'm not passing judgment. I'm simply letting you know that translates when we talk about credit in terms of negative. If I manage my credit correctly, it simply means that I took the right steps to make sure that when these lenders were looking at my credit history, which in fact they actually created, all the different lenders were reporting, so it was all created by lenders. They say, wow, this person has very low risk if I lend them my money. That's what's really going on in manage. So that's it. What will affect credit badly or positively is just how you decide to manage it. And I know I say that in a very relaxed way, and it's not. Sometimes things happen, but that's the bottom line. So I think Liz mentioned something very nice like this, and because I forget things, I don't recall, but yeah, this is what Liz is saying. Hey, don't get scared. Get knowledge. And once you get knowledge, you start to feel a little bit more in control. I take it akin to, I don't know if everyone felt this way, if you all went to high school. If you recall when you graduated 8th grade to high school, you were so nervous. Everybody talked about high school. But once you got there and you got better acquainted with the high school, with the teachers, with the people, everything was fine. You got knowledge, you got control, you weren't fearful anymore. So let's talk about knowledge for a second. So knowledge to me, let me not move because you guys need to hear me. Knowledge to me means that, hey, I need to know that when somebody says, hey, what's your FICO or what's your FICO score? They're just saying, what's your credit score? And the credit score is specifically connected to certain things that are being entered to by, again, the lenders to the credit reporting agencies. The two big guys, and the other things that are affected are your history, your mix, and what's the other one? Oh my gosh, I can't believe one. Hold on. History mix. I'll get back to it. It's going to come back to me. But 35%, these are the two big ones. These are the important ones. 35% of your credit score has to do with payment history. What does that mean to me? That means that if I am not paying on time, look how much it's going to affect me. And on time really just means you've got that date where the payment is due, consider paying it the day before. Stick it on your phone, put it on your calendar. Why? And this may not be the case for everyone, but sometimes your banks are not in New Jersey. And sometimes your bank maybe is in a state where it's ahead of time. In other words, you paid at 5, but for them it's already 6. So maybe you're better off paying ahead of time. It also means, and here's a teeny technique, it also means that if you want to keep the on-time portion, consider already setting a minimum payment for that the day before, so it automatically goes in. This does not mean that you don't go back in and also pay yours, but what it means is that it's not going to make you late, which is a problem, as you can see at 35%. The second biggest one is your usage. And the best way to explain this is in smaller numbers. You want to show that you're only using 30% of whatever it allowed you. And this is what I have seen to be the biggest issue with most folks for many different reasons, but because they're using credit, and I do want to spend a little time on this because I don't think I dedicated a slide to it. They're using credit as, well, I really want that, but I don't have enough. And that's not the way you want to use credit. And I say this carefully because, again, I'm going back to, I know we're all in different situations. I understand that. But if you really want to make sure that your credit score goes up, that you show the lenders that I'm credit worthy, practice this one. Practice on time first and foremost, but practice this one. Say I have a credit card, $900 on it. I used the whole thing. I used all $900. But on that date or the date before the payment was due, I paid back $600, and that put me in a safety zone. So when they're looking, when it's time for them to report at the end of the month, and they don't necessarily always, there's no way to know, they're going to see, oh, wow, Ozzie made sure to not use all of her, more than 30%, and that translates to positive usage. And the other one is going to be history. History's at 15, and that one is important too. But I didn't put those down because of the two that affect us the most. And history is something that's much easier to fix. The two that you want to focus on is the usage and the payment. And many of you may already know this, but I put it in there just because we were saying, hey, get knowledge, get control. Your score will start from 300 to 850. Typically, somewhere in the 500s. So I stuck it in there, like a 5. And every credit reporting agency has a different guideline. But typically, regardless of the credit reporting agency, if your score shows up in the mid 500s, that range, it's not considered a positive score. Okay. I wanted to mention this because anything that we're reviewing today, we're going to get into the nitty gritty now. Anything that we're reviewing is something that's available to you if you go into the consumerfinance.gov. And if you wanted to get more comfortable and really know a little bit more, I wanted you to have this because this is something that your government instituted in 1970 for you to help protect your credit history, the accuracy. So please know that everything we're reviewing is available for you to check. This is stuff that exists for you, okay? So here's your link. That being said, I want to talk about repairing negative credit. It has 4 steps. The second webinar is really more about creating that long-term credit and financial plan. We're going to talk a little bit about it today, but credit is only one part of a healthy financial life. So we want to really move into that and combine them together. For today, we're going to learn that understanding my credit history and my credit score requires a little investigation. Understanding that if I investigate it, there could be something that is off, and I have the right, based on that act, to dispute it. And understanding that a dispute does not equate, woof, you're in the clear, it's all good. It may require other steps and maybe even negotiating. Number 4, we're going to, introduce, but we're going to go into detail webinar number 2, okay? So the number 1, the government put out this lovely website for you so that you are eligible for a free credit report under one website. I need to clarify that you can go into any of the credit reporting agencies to do this. But if you go to www.annualcreditreport.com, the process is almost seamless. You enter your information, they verify it's you, and then you pick which credit reporting agency you'd like to see a report for first. So just makes it easier to find them all in one spot, okay? In that spot, I think I copied and pasted this right from there. In that spot, you're going to have to decide which one of the credit reporting agencies you want to work with. It's super, super important, guys, in my opinion, that you only work with one at a time. And I think I get into this later, but I'd like to briefly explain why. They have X number of days to get back to you if you're disputing, and you want to keep track of all communication and all dates. So it's better for you to handle one, then go to the next one so that you can stay focused. So this is really an opinion. Consider just doing one at a time so it doesn't get messy. And here they all are, the lovely logos. I wanted to pick Experian, not because Experian is better or worse than anyone, just because they're a little bit different in the way they verify you. The other ones, I believe, have a phone verification. They'll do the code 10. This one will ask you various questions about something in your life, and sometimes it's nothing that even applies to you. So just make sure that you realize that you're going to have to go back a little bit to be able to answer the questions. If it's not a problem, if you're not validated as you, there are other options to still get it. So I wanted to at least show you that you want to peek at this. I just picked a random one, so you have an idea what it looks like. When you get your report, we're not talking score. When you get your report back, it could look something like this. They're all a little bit different, but they all have the same type of information. They all have, with this one, Equifax, I think when you click on the arrow, it'll give you details and an option to dispute. I don't recall, but I believe so. So the point is they're all going to have the same type of information, just differently, okay? Now, you ordered your report. You reviewed your report. I think I mentioned that. They're all a little bit different. Let me just hit these key points. You can dispute just about any inaccuracy. When you dispute names, addresses, phone numbers, it's to help clean it up in terms of the perception for the lender and also to clean up any possible fraud. So you definitely want to review everything. You want to keep track of your dates and disputes, and I mentioned that before. Because if they don't get back to you in a certain time, you may be able to knock it off just because they didn't get back to you. So one by one makes that a little easier. But here's my list of things. You can pretty much dispute anything that you feel. And sometimes dispute comes from lack of memory. Sometimes I'm looking at something going, I don't remember having that 3 years ago. What's going on? You dispute it and say, hey, I don't recall ever having this credit card. And it's important too, because sometimes the credit card could have been under a family member that shares your name. So anything that you find that just, even if it's, I don't remember, then go ahead and dispute it. Okay. Oh, I think I mentioned them all here. That's great. Here's your list of everything you can dispute. I don't know that we necessarily have to review them because once you have the slide, you could see it. But again, anything that makes no sense to you, anything you don't remember, and there's one on this, that incorrect date of payments, account opened. If you're that good in that detail, dispute it, but I don't have to know exactly. This is my point. I don't remember. If you don't remember, you have the right to dispute it. You want someone to verify that information. That's what you want to know. I put hard inquiries in red. Hard inquiries are an inquiry where maybe you did not give authorization to a lender to look up your credit. And usually that happens when you apply for something. It's essentially if the lender says, hey, we're running a credit check, you've given them authorization. So if all of a sudden you see, I don't want to use any names, but some credit card company ran an inquiry on you, you have the right to tell your credit reporting agency and they will authorize that. They need to tell you why they ran that inquiry. So just be aware of that too. Why? Because a hard inquiry affects your credit score. It drops it. A soft inquiry does not. So if a If a lender says to you, hey, we're only going to run a soft inquiry, that means your credit score will not be affected. If somebody runs a hard inquiry, already know that it's dropping. So if you apply for 3 credit cards at the same time, be aware they're running a hard inquiry unless they specify that they do not. And that's usually in a pre-qualification part. But be aware that your credit's going to drop, which is not what you're looking for. All right, so once I found something, whatever that is, I have to be told in X number of days, 5 days from the time that that they received it, that hey, we received it, we're gonna do it we're gonna do our due diligence and we'll get to you in 30 days. The interesting part is that if in 30 days they have not responded to the dispute, that means you can request that the dispute, that the entry that you're disputing be revoked. So it is important to keep track of these states for that reason, okay? And my red is just wait, be patient, check your email regularly to check and know your dates. That's the important part. When you finally start checking your results, there's going to be a few things you may see. Deleted is great. That's what you're hoping for. If it remains, you can go ahead and dispute it again. Let's swap this. If it's updated, that means something was changed. You want to double check what that change is, and it is in fact a change that you were looking for. If it happens to be that it was ownership, and it may have been verified, you could then again dispute in a different way. And I'm going to move into that for a second. You can actually at that point reach out to, let's say at this point I am going to use a company. They say they reached out to Discover and Discover was able to verify it was you. And there's money owed on that. At that point is when you go into negotiation. We'll do that in a little bit, okay? And process means, hey, we updated or did something. So if you see process, you want to review a report to ensure what that process means. You know, do I have to redo something again? Do I have to make a note again? I just want to see. You dispute again if the item was under, if you know it's incorrect information, go ahead and dispute it again. There's really no set time frame as to how many times you could dispute. I would say as a human being, maybe pause after 3 times and go a different avenue, because if you're not getting anywhere, you just start to become you're not a client, you start to become a consumer that maybe will be viewed a different way by the lenders because there's so many disputes going on and they have to keep going back and forth. So be cautious about how many times you dispute with the credit reporting agency. At that point, if you dispute it once or twice and you're not getting the results, we're going to talk about going a different route, okay? Please add personal statement. Okay, let me hit the add personal statement. If you dispute it 2 or 3 times, and remember you haven't decided to go a different route yet, it is important to add a personal statement. What you were saying is, let's say a statement is, hey, this is not my credit card. I have never had a Discover credit card. I am not sure why the name is connected. Discover says it's mine. I wouldn't leave it at that, and that's a bad example, because if that's the case, I would be hardcore talking to Discover. But in your personal statement, you can say, I will be reaching out to Discover directly to try to resolve this, so that the next lender that comes in can see that, I don't know if I can use this Discover card thing as part of my process to decide if this person is creditworthy or not. Okay, general guidelines to follow when you're disputing. I think I said this already. Keep your accurate records, super important. When you remember, I said you can take a different route on the dispute rather than just going through that credit reporting agency. Say it's Equifax and I'm dealing with them. Rather than doing that, your different road is going to be, you know what? According to them, whomever they spoke to at Discover says that this is mine. I am now going to reach out to Discover. And this is a little different because I said, hey, my example is Discover is not yours. And in this scenario, it would have to be Discover is yours. So let's say you find out, you call Discover, and Discover reminds you that, yeah, while you were in college, you actually had a credit card. It wasn't a lot, but you used it once in a while and then stop paying on it. Let's say that's a scenario. At this point, what you want to do is remember the goal. The goal is to remove that negative entry because you want to increase your score. And we want to increase our scores for different reasons, because I don't have to go this route to increase my score. Because remember, history is an important part too. If my history becomes stronger and stronger, I don't necessarily have to go this route. So I'm going to assume that I want to go this route because I know in about a year or two, I want to buy a house. I want my credit to be as strong as possible. I'd like to have this removed. It was only $900 and it's affecting me. Seems to like that number. So $900, you call Discover, and you're going to reference the number, you explain the situation, and what you talk to this rep about is explaining that, and this one doesn't always work with Discover with this example, but if I have Discover, just haven't used it in 5 or 6 years, couldn't remember, didn't know where it was, I say, hey, I'm so sorry, but I was a good client for a few years and I still have the card, just haven't used it. I would love to remain with Discover. Discover was my first card. And all I am asking is that you remove, if it's late payment, this is where it gets tricky. You got to know your situation. If it's late payment, all I'm asking is that you please remove those 2 late payments so that my credit score can go up higher so that I have a better chance of getting a loan. If it's money owed, I'm going to get into that later because now you want to start negotiating. So these are key steps. You want to be courteous. You want to be polite. You want to really work with that human beings are empathetic. They understand. They've been there. Now, what's going to stop you is how much leadway, how much capability this person that you're talking to has. Typically, reps have the capability of dropping something because you want to have strong customer service. But if they can't, for whatever reason, they will let you know. If they can, that is wonderful. Even if they're going to negotiate, you know what, I'll drop one. So that's great because that's always going to help you. If they remove that late payment, that's exactly what you're looking for. So if you are courteous and you can sort of connect to them at a human level, reach out to their level of empathy and or sympathy, whichever the case may be, typically they will do that, especially for such a small amount. Let's assume that, I shouldn't say typically, often, I'm used to that, often. Let us assume, I'm not there yet, I'd like to want to negotiate. So before we move on to negotiating, this is just a reminder, are you saving all your communication? Do you have all records of this communication? Are you using the guidelines provided to you? This is before we go to negotiate. That means that I'm sharing my disappointment when I get a no. And you know what, let me go back for a second because I want to target this. If I went to that rep, I'm going to call the 800 number, got a rep, and I got a no, that means that person was unable to do it or did not want to do it, whatever the case may be. I want to try a little bit higher. I want to then do a search online and see, is there maybe a VP of customer relations? Try to look for keywords. And then I want to reach out to that person and let them know, I'm really disappointed. And I'm going back to late payment again. I was late, but I actively used and paid back the card for 3-4 years. And all I'm asking is for these payments to be removed. I'm appealing to you as a loyal client that I had been for those 2 years. If you could just and this is a good point, even when other companies are reaching out, if you could just remove the late payments, that's all I'm asking to do. So this works well with a late payment, okay?
Hey, Ozzie, just wanted to check in with time. We have about 5 minutes left before we need to get to the Q&A.
Oh, no, guys, I'm so sorry. I wasn't, okay. So dispute, final, great. Let's go to negotiate because that's the tricky part. Negotiate is, hey, I still owe you $300. The older, the more negotiating power you have because you go in there and say, and these are your possibilities. I'm going to lower the settlement amount, maybe change the payment plans. And what you're looking to do, and this is important when you negotiate, all I want is when I'm done paying for you to remove my negative information. That's contractual. So negotiation works well when you still owe money. It may not always be perfect to your situation. Maybe you wanted 40% lowered and it doesn't. But the point is, what you want at the end is get that out of my credit history. I don't want it. Negotiation works well. And if we talk one-on-one, I can review this. I'm so sorry, guys. And this is important just to mention because the statute of limitation in New Jersey is 6 years. Guys, be careful to talk to debt collectors, because if they bought your debt and it's almost 6 years, if you open that up and say, yeah, that's my debt, but it's all boom, now you start the whole process again, and you've got to wait another 6 years for it to no longer be eligible for payment. So cease and desist is, if you're being harassed, this is the law. It's your right to say, hey, stop harassing me. That validation is to ask them, can you please validate this step? I can't even talk to you. And that's if you want to talk to them. And statute of limitation, just remember that. Be careful when you talk to someone, because if you open up the debt again, you have another 6 years that they can come after you for payment. Is no credit better? No credit is absolutely better if you're never, ever, ever going to need to borrow money for anything. Not a car, not a house, not to have the emergency fund. I'm so afraid of saying that because I don't agree with that. Yeah, it could be better. But if you ever, ever, ever think you're going to have to borrow money, and borrow money may mean, hey, I need a mortgage, then you should be working on your credit history. Enough about, let's talk about the business for a second. You want to, and it surprised me that some clients do not have business credit. Since you're separating yourself from business, you want to definitely have some type of business credit history. You can do this. The industry standard is still Dun and Bradstreet. So you can do it this way. The other part that you could do it, and once you do this, I'm sorry, Experian or Equifax, the other way to do it is, it's not good enough to, for example, open an account on DMB. You want to apply for something that's going to be reported to these agencies. If not, it's useful. Have a separate business card. And when you pay it off responsibly, and remember what we talked about responsibly, it will increase your credit history. If you don't want to do that or can't do that, consider working with vendors that do report to these credit reporting agencies. You set up a payment account with them, and then they'll report your payment history to these agencies. Maybe apply for a small business loan or a line of credit. You can use it responsibly. Line of credits are great because you're only using what you need. You're only paying back on what you use. So those are wonderful. And then monitor your credit history. The next slide is why monitor, because there's so much fraud going on. And because business is a little bit different than personal, the longer you wait, it becomes more of a hassle to clean it up. So on a business, you should monitor all of them. But on a business one, you really, really want to monitor. Duns and Bradstreet is more of the industry for small businesses, because they break down your credit score a little bit more. They give them an overall credit score. They give you another one going, hey, we think that this business has late payments, or is going into bankrupt, or will be going into bankrupt, so they give a different one. And the other one is a composite based on everything. So they look for other things that may be available that they feel is affecting the business, and give them that number. So for that reason, it's more of an industry. If you notice that when you have a statement of capability, they will always ask you for this number to be on it, and this is part of the reason. They're going to do business with you. They want to know you're on up and up. Experian has a different monitoring system, and the one that was interesting with this is they use the SIS classification, and that's because for a lender, they don't particularly care to work with certain industries. I shouldn't say it. They prefer certain industries, and that becomes important to them to see your score within that industry. And of course, Equifax has their own. So I guess the purpose of you to understand this is that they each have their own numerical grading system for your score. But if you notice, DNB really breaks it down a little bit more. References not important. Now we have reached the Q&A. I apologize, guys. I wanted to say a few more things. Can I just close out with one thing before we get to Q&A? Don't use your credit as a carte blanche to spend when you don't have the cash to spend. Use your credit as helping you build a story, a good story. And what that means is I use my credit as cash, and I only spend out what I have. So when I buy whatever, $300 of groceries, I will then at the end of the month pay my $300 of groceries. And now I don't have to worry. Why would I do that? Because I know it's positively affecting my credit history. Additionally, you can also get well, let me get into that. That's big Q&A, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'm gonna get into the Q&A if you're cool with that.
I am cool with that. Let me just,
Okay.
I've
So we
said
have about, it looks like we have about a hand, like less than 10. So I think we can get through all of these.
I think so.
So some of these folks have been waiting patiently, so I'm going to go in the order of the questions as they were received. So the first one is, I have credit for my business, but it is all based on my personal credit history. The business has been operating for more than 10 years. I will be renewing my lease in 2025, and I do not want to guarantee it personally. How do I get the business to be the creditor, guarantor? I no longer want to be personally responsible.
I just want to make sure I understand the question. So this participant has a business. Rather than opening the business accounts, right? Rather than opening the credit card or having it reported, she is using, or she and he, I apologize, is using personal credit
Well,
to,
she's saying the business has an SBA loan, but when I went through Bank of America to get a new business credit card, I specifically said I want the business to be responsible. But I believe I am personally responsible.
if you have a business credit card, and maybe we can talk one-on-one, that means that they have to have the business. This is what you said to me, business. They have to have looked at the business to issue you a business credit card. You could not have been issued a business credit card only on your credit, on your personal credit. So what that means is that in your scenario, it's not the case. Your business is older. If I have a young business, it's been around 6, 8 months, a credit card company will offer me a card for less credit limit rather than more. But it's still offering me based on the business. It's less because I don't have enough history. So that Bank of America card should be specific to your business, and that should be reported at a different capacity. A good way to also find out is find out, you said you're signing a lease again?
Yes.
Confirm with the owner of the property that he will be using your business credit score for the lease. So he should be looking for that, not for your personal.
Interesting. Okay, next question is, after how many years is a credit score considered high impact or in good condition?
After how many years is a credit score considered high? Well, I could be interpreting the question wrong, but
Yeah,
a credit score, it's not so much years.
right.
Maybe the person's asking, so how many years of consistency? But if you're going out for a loan now, yeah, your credit score may be 850 because for the past 6, 7 months, you've worked hard to increase it. But even with that 850, the lender's still looking at the history. Remember, that history is new history. You created an 850 on new history. The lender's still looking at the history. If it's over 3 or 4 years, and maybe this is where the question is, the impact, depending on the amount, depending on what type of specific loan that was, whether it's credit card, was mortgage, that's going to be the difference. And I think that's what you're asking. So if the question is, how far back are they looking? Where they typically look at the whole thing. But if they see that in the last 2 to 3 years, you've been very specific about carefully growing your credit, carefully maintaining your credit, paying on time, not overusing, that's what they're not using the whole 6 years, but 7 years, whatever the case may be. They're looking at it because they want to be able to have a concept of how you manage, but they will realize that the last few years is the way you've been managing your credit. Now, if it's just the last 3 months, that 850 is not necessarily going to be impactful in the decision making because it's only a few months. I think that's the question.
She added in score age. I don't know what that means. What a score age?
So in terms of how old the score is, right? In
Yeah,
other
that's what
words,
I was thinking, but I was like, I
I've
didn't
had
know.
an 850. Hey, if you've
Yeah,
had an 850 for a few years, that's going to put you in a very comfortable category. You don't
right.
need to go back 6 years. If you've had an 850 for 1 or 2 years within that category, you're in a very comfortable place if you're going out for a loan.
Okay, so hot take, how accurate is Credit Karma?
So I'm assuming the question is how accurate in terms of a score.
Yeah.
Credit Karma will use, and I do not know, so don't quote me, it is using either one or two, maybe even three, but I think it's two different credit reporting agency. So the accuracy has nothing to do with Credit Karma. The accuracy has to do with whatever agency they pulled it from. Is it accurate? It is pretty accurate because they didn't just make that up. They actually pulled it from a credit reporting agency, but it's one. That means that the other two could have a different score. But if you notice, your scores are usually within like a 20-point range. So how accurate? Decently accurate. You can use it as a gauge.
Great. Next question. What would be considered a positive account to be reported?
I'm not sure I understand the questions. So positive account to be reported is, I hope I'm understanding it, is an account where I paid on time. If you're asking,
Yeah.
hey, what type of accounts they are, anything that you are borrowing and that lender, I'm sorry, decides they want to keep track. As an example, I had a client who was late, long story, on her payment, on her rent, wanted to get out of the lease, again, long story. And her leaseholder said, well, when you're late, I've got to send it out to be reported. That means that that person is using this resource, this tool for them, right? Because as the lender, I want some type of protection. And my protection is, hey, if you are late, I'm going to report it. So going back to what is a positive, anything that your lender submits to the credit reporting agency, whichever it may be, that shows on-time payments, that shows less than 30%. I'm sorry, less than 70 because you want to use no more than 30% usage. That shows, actually, those are the two. Those are the really big two that you're looking for. So either of those two would be considered positive. The trick is depending on who you're using. And I say this because I have clients who don't have many credit cards. They have just, food bills, whatever, utilities. So they don't have much of anything. But there are techniques, for example, I can put I can use Experian Boost to connect my utilities, and that's a positive payment as long as they're payment. And most folks I know pay on time, your phone, the utilities. So these are things that you're more aggressive about making sure because they're more of a need to you. So those will be positive also. So anything that is positive is anything that shows regular on-time payment and that usage, no more than 30%.
Okay, so I think there's kind of a little bit of a misconception about personal versus business, right? So there is a question about, are you going to be doing a separate presentation for business credit? Since we really just touched on personal
Yes.
credit
Well,
and
number
how to,
one, yep, I can actually move into, now that you've mentioned that, I can actually move into that a little more in the second webinar, but I do want to say something to you. I think the reason I don't often separate them, there are slight nuances. There's absolutely nuances, but that very basic guideline is true for business. There's really no difference. I'm going to pay on time, whether it's the guy that's allowing me to do net terms, or whether it's my credit card, or whether it's my line of credit. I'm going to pay on time, and I'm going to keep under a certain usage. Those two rules are super important, whether I'm in personal or in usage. In terms of how else to build credit, although this seemed very short, this is really the way that you start to build credit. Without that, you have nothing. So I don't know that I'll separate them because I don't know that in an hour, because remember, they're very similar, that in an hour there'll be enough to say, well, this is the guideline for business credit because it's so similar. So by touching on personal and then just tipping at business, I've actually really, I should say this because I think I mentioned it on the business one. Nobody's giving you a free report, so you've got to order those. So it's better for you to keep it just clean and know, hey, I've done nothing that will generate a negative credit. I pay on time. I don't use more than 70%. I pay on time and that's it. So if you're asking me, are you going to dedicate a full one? We can always talk one-on-one, absolutely. But I don't know that there will be much that I could dissect that would make it so different and be an hour webinar. But a 20-minute conversation, yeah, I can dissect enough.
So yes, to set those sessions up, it's in the chat, follow the link, and you can request one-on-one counseling with Ozzie. So when applying for new business credit, what credit history is being used?
Yours.
Yeah, your personal credit.
Yep. I know it's sad to hear, and that's why it is so important to keep good credit. So when you are brand new, they're using your personal credit. So they're looking at your history, but you're also going to have to, and I don't want to say with every lender, but with the lenders that we have worked with, you're going to have to generate a business plan. The reason for that is while they're using your personal credit to know that, hey, if this goes belly up, we can take it from you. We could see what you have, we could see what you have, we could see your collateral. You have to remember with lending, it's all about risk. We talk about loans like it's like, oh, I need this. The bottom line is this is somebody else's money. They only want to give it to you if there's minimum, they'd like to say no risk, but that's impossible, but minimal risk. So if that is the case, what they're using is your business credit, your business history, but they want to see a well thought out business plan with some real projections, not fancy projections that they think, oh, look at this, the numbers are beautiful, real projections. So when you're going out for a loan, remember you're going to have to really work hard in creating that business plan so that it gives a detailed view to your lender, because your personal history is only what they're using to gauge your credit worthiness, and you are the owner of the company. That's not enough for them to give you a loan.
So I don't know how much longer we want to stay on here, but there is just a few people are asking sort of a similar question. Let's just wrap it up with this question. And then if anyone has additional questions that weren't answered by Ozzie, you can request counseling by using the chat, the link that's in the chat. So are there specific lenders, banks who are more friendly to new small business owners who may not have any credit, or we're just starting out? Who are some lenders and banks and things that we could be starting with?
So a great resource is for you to join a credit union. The reason for that is that they are more apt to lend to you, even if it's a personal loan that you can use, because you're a member of that credit union rather than just a customer. So consider that many of them are niche specific. So you'd want to do, and again, I can send you a list. So consider a credit union. Depending on how much you're looking for, consider a community financial development corporation. These are specific nonprofits, we call them, and there's a bigger list of traditional lenders, but these are traditional non-traditional lenders. And typically they have a little more leniency with the lending process.
The CDFIs?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. But what you have to be careful with them is that they cap at a certain amount. I think the most I've ever seen is 100. And that doesn't mean you'll get 100. Remember, you're brand new. They're still assessing risk. But yet, if you're asking me, are they a little more open to maybe talking to you when it's brand new? And brand new, remember what a startup still is when a lender talks about that. It's typically a business who's been around for at least 2 years. They still consider that startups. You haven't had a chance to really solidify your staying power. So anything less than 2 years is such an iffy area. So if you don't have a strong business plan with solid projections, and you are not seeking out, like this person just said, lenders that may be a little more open to something less than 2 years about that, you're really going to have a hard time. Also, don't. I had a client, and when we were done with his business plan, believe it or not, he shared it with a relative, and the relative lent him the money. So there's different avenues. I know that's not what you want to hear. One last thing I want to say is I don't know if anyone, and I am not promoting Valley in any way, shape, or form, but I was asked this question. Valley National Bank has a program called Community Lending, I believe. So if you have your account there, your personal account, or even your business account, reach out to them, because depending on your history with them, I think they cap at 100,000, but there's more leniency because now they kind of know who you are there. And that's specific to Valley, not promoting them, just you asked and that came to my head.
Yeah, I think that's a good point though, is that whoever you go with, you need to start that relationship
Yes,
now. Don't
yes.
wait till crap hits the
So
fan.
you're ready. On Liz's point, and Liz, that's a great point. This is why I love Liz. Liz and I should just go on the road. Um, that is a wonderful point. I want you all to think how much you've hung out with your bank. You're probably going, yeah, I do. I take a little picture, I deposit, I keep on going. Maybe I pop in, use the ATM. When did you go inside and establish a relationship with a person at the bank? I'm going to guess most, not always, say never, I'm too busy. Start doing that, because I will tell you, this is the one guideline I tell every client. The rule of business is not money. We all think it's I'm gonna make money. No, the rule of business is relationships. Those relationships are going to get you the money. Okay.
Mhm.
So consider you have Chase. And one more thing, and you're going to kill me, Liz. You don't have to stick to your personal bank. If you're hanging out with your personal, in fact, you don't have to stick to your business bank if it doesn't offer the right business products that you're looking for. The banks all provide products for you. When Liz said to you, get knowledge, and then I think I said get control, because darn it, I can't remember what Liz said. She's meaning there's different avenues. They don't start asking questions. These banks should also be competing for you. And by
Yes.
that I mean they should have products that are good for you as a small business. So if you happen to be with Bank A and you ask Bank A, hey, what are your products for a small business? And none of them were really that exciting. Take a little walk over to Bank B and start asking a few questions. And don't be afraid to close your account with Bank A and put it with Bank B, because they have a better program for you. Shop around. You shop for the dress, you shop for the shoes, you shop for the food. You're picky about that. Be picky about your bank too. So
Hallelujah.
now I'm going to shut it down. But I do want to say it's not just me, but if you want to talk to me, we are available. There is on this slide, the njsbdc.com/request counseling. But because it's the network is so big, you guys, if you don't put looking for credit repair assistance with Ozzie, you may end up in your county. Remember we spoke about county, my goodness, my brain just goes about county locations. So if you don't specify that, it will go somewhere else. It doesn't mean you can't specify that once somebody reaches out to you, but it's important in the section on the bottom. It's a free form. Just put request credit repair assistance with Ozzie. Rabia has a lovely, and thank you, Rabia, because we could not do this without you. She's on the back end. She knows everything, does everything. She needs to be hired by all of us, but that's a different story. Please make sure you answer this survey. My understanding is once you enter that survey, you get the slide deck if you want it. But the survey also helps us get a little bit better. So for us, it's important to understand what the stuff you're looking for. Now, I did not cover, let's get into the hardcore of building finances. Please join us next time to get into that, okay? Thank you for your time. Thank you, Liz and Rabia. Thank you, every single participant here, for your time and hanging out with us.
Have a great week, everybody. Thanks, Ozzie.
Bye, guys.